Hey everybody, Lonnie here. So we're on part 4, and this part we're going to read our forecast data, which is coming from a weather service called Dark Sky, and we'll get that forecast data coming in, and that's going to be a JSON data. We'll get that into a JObject, get ready to do our convert function, just like what we did with our weather station. But now we're going to do the similar thing for the forecast service, but it's going to be a little bit more complicated. So it'll be nice to see how that happens. Okay, going to the architecture here, we're working on this forecast service, reading it from Dark Sky, getting it ready to send over to the sequential data store in OSIsoft Cloud Services, also known as OCS. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch over to our application that we've been working on. Here is the weather station collector. So the first thing we want to do is let's go ahead and create a new collector called forecast, our forecast collector. And I want to go ahead and just group those in a folder. And we'll call this our collectors. We'll move the forecast collector, the weather station collector here. Let's go ahead and open up our forecast collector, and we'll change the names. Forecast collector and forecast collector. Coming down here, let me come back to our let me inadvertently just change the root one here. We'll change that, get rid of our copy there. Okay, so we have our weather station, which is great. I wanted to change this timer to 0, and then fire every we'll fire every 5 minutes. And then our forecast collector here is firing every 3 seconds. Okay, and then we have ambient weather here. We're going to need to do something, set up a new data source. So I'll go ahead and copy our ambient weather, and we'll call this a Dark Sky. That's where we're getting our data from. Looking at Dark Sky, we're not going to have any of this stuff here. So we probably will have some keys, so let's leave that here. The convert function will have to be reworked. I'm going to go ahead and comment out that for now. Okay, let's take a quick look at Dark Sky's website, and we can explore that a little bit, see how their API works. So here's Dark Sky. I have them pulled up. There's this Dark Sky API, and I already have an account created and I'm logged in, so I'm going to go over to the console. If you see, I have a secret key, and there's a sample call here that shows the key along with our latitude and longitude. So this is obviously not my latitude and longitude, is just whatever. Actually, I think it might be close to where I am. So it's showing we have our current weather conditions for that latitude and longitude. There's forecast minute by minute, and then there's also hourly, and there's daily forecasts that are that contain a bunch of different information. So it's pretty extensive. What we're going to focus on is we're going to pull some stuff out of the current and out of the hour. I think what we want to do is I want to get the icon. I want to get the summary to display in the weather application, and then the daily, I want to use that, and I like to have this summary for the kind of like for the what's going on for the week, and then I want to pull in this data. There's I think it goes up to 7 days worth of data, one for each day. When we're going to pull in the icon and the summary, and I also want to pull in the min and max temperatures. So we're going to take in all that data, and then we'll create some classes with some types, and we'll create some streams from those. All right. So that's the game plan. So let's go ahead and copy this call, and we'll bring it back to our Dark Sky. So we'll do that. Let's rename this Dark Sky. So this is our lat and long. And then we just have an application or an API key. We call it an API key. Let me look back real quick. They call it just your secret key. Okay. Okay. So anyway, that's our key. So call it our application key, I think. Replace that. We don't need this anymore. Our base URL is going to look like our forecast right to here. This will not be our property. This is going to be, we're going to send in a double latitude and a double longitude. We're not going to do this get anymore. We'll return the base URL with a slash, and then our application key, and then a slash, and then we'll go ahead and do our latitude, and then we'll have a comma, and then we'll do our longitude. Okay, so that's going to return the URL that we're going to need, so we'll have to pass in our latitude and longitude. And we have our key. Okay, I like it. All right, let's come back to our collector here. And from here, we'll have our get data async. I think that will remain the same. But we're gonna go ahead and pass in our latitude and longitude. So let's go ahead and grab this right here, and we're going to pass that in, pass it in here, and we don't need the types. We'll just pass in a latitude and longitude. Let's change this to forecast. Forecast right, and right here, forecast. We have it right here. And we'll set up a double. That's going to equal this value, and then we'll have a double will equal that value for where I live. We're going to pass that in. And then we'll read the data. The data is coming in here. We're going to request the dark sky, and that's going to be get URL. And we'll pass in our latitude and longitude. That's going to return our request. We'll make our request here. We're going to get our results back. Now this is a little bit different. If we look at the data that's coming back, we have one JSON object, and then we're going to be pulling the current, and I know we're going to be pulling the daily. So let's go ahead, and that'll just be a single JSON object. And we can just do a JObject parse here. And that should do the conversion to JObject, and then we'll be good to go. Let's go ahead and try running that and see how it looks. This is going to be commented out. We're not going to do this yet, and we're not going to do this. Okay, we can go ahead and run this and see what it looks like. All right, our data is coming in. That looks great. I can see that we have our latitude and longitude, and we're collecting all our data. So let's go ahead, since that was so quick, let's go ahead and set up our model and talk about that, and we'll get ready to do our conversion. So here I'll call this forecast. Here's our forecast, and we'll call this forecast. Now, if we look at, if we come back and we look at the dark sky data that's coming in, we're right here, we have currently, and we have this time value. And looking at the documentation, this is a UTC time in seconds from the Epic, which is 1970, January 1st. So we're going to have to do a conversion here to get the proper formatted time. But we want this time field. I want the summary. I also want the icon. So we want to get these three values. So if I look at that, we can say we can use this time here for this. And then we can say the summary, this is going to be a type string, not a double, so that'll be a new type. There won't be any units associated with that, so we can just say public string, and we'll call this summary, and we'll do a get set, and that will be that will look like that. And so we're going to use that to display. We'll have the icon, and then we'll display the summary below it, and it'll say clear in this case. And then the same thing with the icon right here. We're going to display that, and we'll call this icon. Okay, so that's forecast, and then we do have some temperatures, but they're not part of this object, so I'll comment out those for a moment, and we'll just look at this. Okay, so we will have a date time, but this time it's going to be formatted a little differently when we do our conversion. Okay, now because we have two components, we have our current and we have our daily. I think what we're going to do is we're going to actually have we'll have two classes, one for the current and one for the daily, and then we'll have an overall forecast object that will contain one instance of the daily, and it'll be a list, or one instance of the current, and it'll be a list of the daily. So that's going to look something like this. We'll take this, we'll call it forecast current, and then we can copy this over, and we can have forecast daily. And the forecast daily, looking at our object here, our forecast daily is going to have a time, a summary, an icon, and we're going to have this temperature min and temperature max. Okay, so let's set that up. So we're going to have a time, we're going to have a summary, we'll have an icon. What did I say? Time, summary, icon. Yep. And then we want this temperature min and temperature max. So those are already ready to go. Temperature min, temperature max. Those are going to be doubles in Fahrenheit, so we can reuse that. Let's go ahead and uncomment this, and we'll say this is going to look like, we'll call this temperature min, and we'll call this temperature max. And we're not going to need this. And those will be degree Fahrenheit. I'm going to call this temperature low, temperature high. We don't need that anymore. Okay. And the other thing is we want that weekly summary. That weekly summary, we look at that. That's under daily, and it's summary. So that will be, we'll call this the, let's call this the daily summary, and then we'll contain this under here. So string, and we'll call this the summary daily, and that'll be get set. And so we have our keys once again are going to be our date times, and everything else is pretty much like what we had set up for our weather station. We have our unit of measures, and yeah, I think we're good to go here. And so what I wanted to show here was the last thing is just to combine these two and create an overall forecast class, and that forecast class will have a public, and we're going to do forecast current, and we'll call this current, and that'll be get set, and we'll also do a public forecast daily, and we'll call that daily, and that'll be a get set. But we need to make this a list because it's going to be a collection, right? So we'll go ahead and make that a list. And so then we can pass around this object, and we'll access these two classes from that. So that sets up our model. The last thing we need to do here is we need to set up this conversion function. So let's go ahead and get that set up here. This is going to be a forecast class, and we're passing in the data. Let's go ahead and delete all this. And let's create a forecast object. Let's get a new one for that. And then we need to create, from that, we're going to create a new current. And that'll be a new forecast current. Now we want to go ahead and grab that current property in our object here. So we'll go ahead and say current data is going to equal our data, and we call that currently. And we know that needs to be, we need to cast that as a J object. And now that we have our currently data, we can go ahead and grab the timestamp and those the summary and those other items. So we'll go ahead and say our current timestamp time is going to equal, and so we're going to have to do some conversion here because we have our C data, and within that we have our time, and we know we have a value, right? But that's going to be a type long right here, these seconds. So that's going to be type long. But we need to do a conversion here. Okay. So I'll bring in a conversion function here. I'm not going to type it up. It's a pretty simple function. But this Unix to second, we're going to bring in a long value. The epoch is January 1st, 1970 UTC, and then we're going to add those seconds to whatever the value is, and we're going to return that as a type date time. And so here we can just go ahead and we can say Unix to seconds, and we can pass in this long value, and then that will get it set up to where now we're returning a date time. Okay. And then we want to grab the we need to grab the summary, and summary is also from C data, and we know that is summary, and we want to go value, and we don't want to convert that to a string. Okay. And then our current dot icon, and that's also going to be a C data, and we'll make that icon, and value string, and then we know now, so that's from our current class. Now we need to go ahead, or from our current property, now we need to grab that, we need to grab the daily property, and that's going to be, we'll call this D data, and that's going to equal data, and I think we're calling that daily, right? And we know that in this case that the daily will be we're going to have a couple of components in there, right? We're going to have this summary here that we're going to grab, but then we also have this data that we're going to grab, and the data is an array. Okay, so the data, so this here we'll cast it to a J object, and we can go ahead and populate our current dot summary daily. That's going to be equal to our daily data, and that's going to be summary, and that'll be value, and yeah, string. Okay, so now that we have all of our current populated, we can go ahead and just say, we can say our forecast.current equals that current. That'll get that our overall forecast object populated. Okay, now let's go ahead and do our daily information, which is we're going to be iterating through. So let's do a for. Well, we need to create a collection. So let's do a daily, and that's going to be new list, and we want this to be forecast. Yeah, forecast daily. So we'll create a new list of that, and then we'll do the for each. And that's going to be, we're going to be going through our data here, and each item will be a daily, will be an object. Let's come back here and look. Will be this data object here, and so we need to go through each one of those. And remember, we're going to pull out the summary, the icon, the time, of course, and then also this min and max temperature. So let's go ahead and get that. And so we need to make sure we're pulling out the data here. And yeah, then we can go for each. So let's go ahead and create a new forecast daily object. And in that, we want to go ahead and do our time. That's going to equal. So we're going to, we'll do that Unix to second, and we'll do our item, and that's going to be time. And we're going to take that to value, and a long. Okay, so that gets our time going. Now we want to do our icon and our summary. So it'll be very much like this. I'll just go ahead and copy this down, and we'll just make this D. Whoops. Whoops. Copy this line. Yeah, so it'll be D summary and D icon, and then here we'll do item and item. So it takes care of those two things. And finally, we need to do our temperature min and max. So we'll do our temperature low, which is going to be item, and that will be, if we look, we said that's temperature min here. So temperature min, and we'll grab the value, and the value will be a double. And we'll do our temperature high, and do temperature high, or temperature max. And then finally, we need to add this to our collection. D. Once we have added the collection, and then, so we'll iterate through those, we'll get all those added in. And then the last thing we need to do is just make sure that we set our daily in our overall forecast object equal to the daily here. And we can return the forecast object. Okay. Static forecast. Okay. I like that. So we come back to our forecast here, or I mean our forecast collector right here. We can go ahead, take the data, and we can do our dark sky. And we'll do the convert, and we'll convert it to our forecast data. So let's go ahead and run through that, just see how it works. Okay, we have our data. I'm going to go ahead and step into this function, and we can create a new forecast. Create this new time. We can see we have our time here. The summary looks good. Icon looks good. Now we're creating our daily object. We're going to grab the summary from that. We're going to populate it into current. Yep, our current daily summary there. This current is here, so we open that up. We can see there's all our data. That looks great. And then we're going to go through the daily now, and the daily will do another conversion. We'll get the summary. Let's see, we have our time, we have our summary, we have the icon, temperature low, temperature high, and then we're adding it to our collection. Let's go ahead and just come down to the bottom, and let's see how this looks. So we have that, we have a collection, we have 8 items in our daily. If I open up one of those, we can see all that information is there, so that's great. That's exactly what we're looking for. So we'll go ahead and stop that. So we have our forecast stuff ready to go. Okay, so that concludes part 4. Part 5 will be moving that data into OCS, and it should be pretty straightforward. Be very similar to what we did for the weather station data. And once we have all our data in OCS, the data store, then we'll start moving on to deploying that to Azure as functions. And you'll see how straightforward that is. It's super cool, super easy. And then finally, we'll start working on our API to pull that data out, and we'll get into the front end development. All right, my name's Lonnie. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next part. Bye-bye.